I'm sharing with you how to make incredibly delicious chocolate eclairs. Filled with pastry cream and topped with chocolate ganache, they're pretty easy to make at home. Welcome to Recipes by Karina, where I share with you how to make classic and simply delicious recipes. Make sure to subscribe or follow my page for a new recipe each week. To start, we want to make choux pastry, which is really simple and easy. It's used to make eclairs, cream puffs or profiteroles, which you can turn into a fancy croquembouche, as well as savoury French appetizers. In a medium-sized saucepan, measure out the water and butter. You'll need 1 cup or 250 ml of water and 1 stick, half a cup or 113 grams of butter. You'll notice I give the recipe amounts in cups and grams, so no matter where you live in the world, you should find this recipe easy enough to follow. If you'd like the full recipe for these eclairs, it'll be on my website as well as the full measurements in the description box below. Add a pinch of salt to the saucepan and place it over medium heat until the butter is melted and it has come to the boil. It may seem a little odd to be melting these together because usually with pastry you're kind of trying to keep it as cold as possible, but choux pastry is a little different. While the butter is melting, measure out the flour. We'll need 1 cup or 125 grams of all-purpose standard white flour. Place it into a separate bowl. You'll notice the flour is the only dry ingredient in this recipe. There isn't any sugar, it's not traditional, and you won't really need any. The filling and chocolate on top is what is going to give most of the flavour and sweetness to the eclairs. We also won't need any leaven like baking powder or soda, as the egg and steam are what makes these eclairs puff up over double their original size when they're in the oven. Make sure the butter is melted and it's come to the boil, then we're ready to add in the flour. Pour it into the saucepan and using a wooden spoon, combine the ingredients together. Keep the heat to medium-low at this point while continuously stirring, making sure to incorporate all of the flour. It'll be pretty clumpy and stiff at this point once the flour has been absorbed. As you keep stirring over the heat, the mixture will start to come together in a ball, smooth out and stop sticking to the sides. This should take a few minutes so you'll get a bit of an arm workout. We're trying to cook out the flour here, not to get rid of that floury taste as that will happen in the oven later, but to actually cook the starch so when the eclairs are in the oven and puff up, they hold their shape so much better. It's kind of like making a roux to thicken a sauce. The cooked starch stabilizes the other ingredients. When it's starting to stick together in one big ball, it's time to remove it from the heat. Place the mixture into a mixing bowl, pushing it out flat and leave it to cool for about 10 minutes or so uncovered. We're going to be adding eggs next, so we don't want them to cook as we mix them in. After 10 minutes, check to feel the temperature of the flour mixture, and if it's warm but not hot, we're ready to continue. We'll need between 4 and 5 medium room temperature eggs. Start with the first and crack it into the mixing bowl. Using the wooden spoon, start to mix everything together. It'll be hard at first as the egg doesn't really want to incorporate. You can use a stand mixer for this or a hand mixer, but I've always just done it by hand. Once it's combined, add the next egg and continue. With each egg added, you'll notice the batter significantly start to thin out. I find a wooden spoon is best here rather than a whisk, as the batter will just get completely stuck. The first egg is the most challenging to incorporate, but the next 3 should be a lot easier. The reason I say between 4 and 5 eggs is they're not standard in size. The size of my eggs won't be exactly the same as your eggs, so when the consistency of our dough is really important, we need to go by feel to get it accurate. We want to get it to the dropping consistency, which means when you lift a scoop out of the bowl with the wooden spoon, after a few seconds it falls down in one clump. Kind of hard to explain, but with the video you should get what I mean. Here you can see it's still too thick and isn't falling off the spoon. I'm not certain if it'll need the whole egg or just half, so I'm going to whisk it up with a fork in a separate bowl and add half at a time, checking the consistency to get it right. It's still a little too thick, so I ended up using the whole egg. This is basically the perfect consistency. It falls in one clump off the wooden spoon after a few seconds. It's really easy to just go ahead and add 5 eggs, although you may find it just pours off the wooden spoon, and at that point it's kind of too far to come back. When the eclairs bake, you'll find they won't hold their shape and will kind of melt down instead of puffing up in a beautiful shape. Fill a piping bag with the choux pastry. If you don't have a piping bag, you can use a Ziploc bag or make one with baking paper. Pipe lines onto your lined baking tray. It's really optional what size and shape you want to go for. Mine are about 8 cm or 3 inches long. I'm using a 2 cm round tip here. Once you have your shapes, you'll notice they won't be pretty at the ends. This isn't an issue as we can fix it with water. Wet your finger and use it to shape the ends of the eclair, making sure there are no thin bits of choux pastry at the end, as these will burn in the oven. Place your eclairs into a hot 220 degrees Celsius or 420 degree Fahrenheit oven for around 30 minutes or until puffed up and golden brown. You don't want to take them out too early, as they may not have had long enough to dry out, which will lead to a soggy eclair rather than crispy. There are many options for fillings and toppings for your eclairs. I'm going traditional with chocolate ganache as a topping and cream patisserie or pastry cream for a filling. I will leave the recipe for pastry cream in the description box below, as well as on my website. If you haven't made it before, I have a very informative video which will help you get it absolutely perfect. To make the chocolate ganache, pour hot cream over your dark chocolate and leave it for 5 minutes before stirring. You should end up with a thick, glossy chocolate mixture. When your eclairs have cooled to room temperature, they are ready to be filled. Use a piping bag, knife or end of a spoon to create 2 holes at the end of the eclair. Pipe your pastry cream into each end until the eclair is full. Dip it into the chocolate ganache to get a good coating on the top and leave it to set. I would recommend only doing this about 30 minutes before serving your eclairs, as they will start to soak up the moisture from the pastry cream and become soggy. These are incredibly delicious and something fun and not too difficult to make at home. Let me know if you are going to try this recipe and if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on my next video.